In this video we are going to look at how do you grade a Google form. So I have my Google form here, and if you see, the first thing is I have a name, and then I go through and have some multiple choice, a grid, I've got a list, and I do have one free response question. The short text and free response questions are going to be much more difficult to actually do within auto grading, but I will show you how. Your first step you want to do is actually take this form yourself so that you have all the correct answers. They will be necessary to actually do your auto grading. The next thing, I go to my form in Google Docs. When I open it up, I'll have both my list, which is row 2 of all the correct answers, and then each of my students. Now, I could go through personally and grade these by hand, but I can also use some of the program to be able to help me out. If I look, column C through I actually are problems that can be graded very quickly, whereas J becomes a little bit more complex. So let's start with column C through I. Now these were multiple choice, so the answers are automatically picking up. So I want to say to the program, every time that there's Obama for C, they get a point, and if not, they get a 0. So I come over to the right, and I'm going to start with column L just so that I'm not right beside my final answers. And I'm going to use if-then statements, just like I would if I was working in Microsoft Excel. So I put an equal sign so it knows it's a formula, and I write if, and what I want to do is I want if my answer for the student is equal to the teacher's correct response, they get a 1. If not, they get a 0. So if you look, I've got the if parentheses, the two things I'm checking the values of. If they're true, you put a 1, and then comma. For false, you give a 0. And that person was correct. And if I drag it down to all my students, the second person was correct, third person was incorrect because they said Pelosi. Now what I can do is I can start in that column L and drag all the way across, and it will fill in all the correct answers for my students. I know there were 7 total columns and 3 rows, so I drag it down 3 rows over 7 columns. Let's drag it down 3. I'm going to drag it over, so there's 7 highlighted. Well, there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So now I have all their answers for those first 7 problems already done. Now, as I said, this one right here is much more complex. So we'll cover that in video 2.